The APEC meetings in Lima, Peru. What's on the agenda and what can we expect from the member economies? Hello, I'm Anand Naidu and this is The Heat. Leaders and delegates from the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum, also known as APEC, are meeting in Lima, Peru this week. APEC promotes economic cooperation, trade and investment among its 21 Pacific Rim economies. They now account for over 60% of the world's GDP and nearly 40% of global population. Chinese President Xi Jinping is expected to make an official visit to Peru on Thursday and will participate in the APEC meetings. Meanwhile, Peru is also expected to officially inaugurate a massive Chinese-built megaport during President Xi's visit. The port at Shanghai, north of Lima, will vastly increase the volume of trade between Latin America and Asia. We will discuss this later in the show, but we begin with the former Peruvian ambassador to China, Juan Capunay. I talked with him earlier about APEC and Peru's growing ties with Beijing. Ambassador, thanks so much for joining us. The Asia-Pacific region now accounts for over 60% of global GDP and about 38% of the global population. How do you see the importance of APEC and the potential for it to drive further economic and investment opportunities in the region?
As you know, the Asia-Pacific meets, as you said, the more than 40% of the world population, but the main thing is that Asia-Pacific means more than 50% of the world trade and 66% of the gross product, world gross product. The main thing is that Asia-Pacific has been working together for a long time, based on a mutual confidence and a spirit of an open economy. Since the establishment of APEC in 1989, APEC members have been working on the basis of economic interdependence, trying to build the basics foundation of the globalization. Today we are facing some difficult times. There are signs of deglobalization. There are new signs of protectionism. That could be some limitation for the APEC initiative. However, there is a goodwill among the APEC members in order to work together. Mostly of the APEC members, we have free trade agreement, bilateral free trade agreement. But APEC Peru is working on the basis to build a Pacific trade agreement, a regional trade agreement.
Right.
It could help all the members of APEC in order to build their own economy, in order to open their own economy. And the main thing, in order to design or in order to prepare the whole system into the new economic reality.
Right. Ambassador, the Chinese President Xi Jinping and a large Chinese delegation will be in Peru attending the APEC meetings. How important is the China-Peru economic and trade relationship?
China means the first trade partner of Peru and one of the main investors in Peru. We have a free trade agreement since 2008, and mostly of the Peruvian export products are going mainly to the Asia-Pacific and China in particular. With China, we have built a very solid political and diplomatic structure based on 4 instruments or 4 elements. The first one is the free trade agreement, and China is our first trade partner. The second one is we have signed a strategic and comprehensive partnership, and China is one of the main investors in Peru. With China also we have a strategic and economic dialogue committee that joined private sector and public sector. And with China also, we have a bilateral plan of action. Thanks to this structure, with China, we have a very solid, a very win-win relationship based on confidence and based on a complementary, economic conditions. That's why China has invested in the port of Shanghai in the southern part of Lima. It will be the most important logistic hub, transportation hub, and operational hub. And it will allow Latin America or South America to deal with China from Peru, from the port of Shanghai. Today, all our cargo have to go to Mexico or to the United States in order to go to China. After the inauguration of the port of Shanghai by the President Xi Jinping during this week, all the cargo will go straight from Peru to China. And when I mean that, for example, all the cargo from Brazil to China will have the benefit of the reduction of 15 days, the transportation time. And all the cargo from Chile, Ecuador, Colombia will have the benefit that the transportation time will be reduced in 10 days. It will mean a very good, competitive situation because the prices of the product will be reduced definitely.
Right, Ambassador, one other major issue for the countries of Latin America, and that is digital transformation, connectivity. These are two main areas of interest for the countries of Latin America, for Peru itself. How can Chinese companies, say for instance like Huawei, impact the technology and communications infrastructure in a country like Peru?
Huawei is working together with the government of Peru, and we are getting the benefits of the very good, development and social programs in benefit of the Peruvian community. For the small towns, they have what they call the Huawei bus that goes from town to town, teaching the students, teaching the people how to use the computer, and let them also to use the computer. What Huawei is doing now is very important. They are contributing for the transformation, for the digital transformation in Peru, and we are working together with them in order to establish what we call here in Peru the digital Silk Road.
Yeah.
The digital, one way, right.
Okay, Ambassador, I've just got a little bit of time left, but I want to talk about the challenges of climate change to a country like Peru. In fact, to the countries of Latin America as well. And of course, sustainable development is also very important. How can a country like China, which is the world leader in the transition to green economies, help a country like Peru, indeed help the continent of South America move towards these new technologies?
We are working together, not only Peru, but also other South American countries. We are working together developing the clean energy, using the solar energy. We have a very open and extended areas, of desert, of mountains, with a very beautiful sunshine days. We can use that for our development. And China has a very good experience, and China can transfer the technology to Peru,
right,
on that area.
Okay. Ambassador, thanks so much for joining us.
No, thank you very much, and it was my pleasure.
Time now to hear from our panel. Joining us from Boston is Jorge Heine. He is a former Chilean ambassador to China. Also with us from Beijing is Einar Tangen. He is a senior fellow with the Taihe Institute, and he's chairman of Asian Narratives. And also joining the discussion is Gong. He is a professor at the University of International Business and Economics in Beijing. Welcome to all of you. Ambassador Heine, let me start with you. This is an important meeting for APEC leaders, as well as the hundreds of business people who are in Lima for this gathering. How important is the gathering as a driver for further economic cooperation, as well as the opportunities it would offer going forward?
Well, I would say it is very important. Here we have, the leaders of 21 economies around the Caribbean basin that are gathering at a very difficult moment in world affairs and trying to come up with some solutions. The very fact that the meeting will be attending by the President of the United States and the President of China gives you an indication. These are the two of the most powerful leaders in the world. It gives you an indication of how significant this is. But let me also add the following. There are at least 5 leaders that will be attending for whom this meeting will be the first. The President of Indonesia, the President of Mexico, the President of Vietnam, as well as the Prime Ministers of Singapore and of Thailand. So for them, this will be a very important occasion to mingle, to get to know each other, and to look for ways trade across the Pacific Basin can be given a further impetus. You mentioned the question of the green economy, which is absolutely critical, in which China and the South American economies are very complementary.
And, given, Ambassador, the geopolitical challenges, economic challenges that the globe faces right now, do you expect there to be added urgency to these leaders coming to, concrete agreements that can be implemented?
Yeah, very much so. Look, there is this urgent necessity of moving forward. Latin America has been going through a very difficult period. In APEC, there are 3 Latin American countries, Chile, Peru, and Mexico. And it seems to me they ought to be looking forward to how to connect better with East Asia, which is the fastest growing region in the world. APEC has been such an important instrument in that regard. And I very much hope that that can be given a further impetus now. And it seems to me, you mentioned earlier, the question of digitalization. Again, some of the leading companies in the world in matters digital are Chinese companies, and they can't do much to bring Latin American countries fully into the digital age.
Einar Tangen, the Chinese President Xi Jinping, as well as a very large Chinese delegation, they're in Lima right now. President Xi will also be paying an official visit to Peru as well. To what extent does his attendance underline the importance that China attaches to Asia-Pacific cooperation and to the idea of multilateralism, which has been championed so often by China? I mean, what's going to be the message from President Xi? Einar, can you hear me? Okay, we'll try to get back to Einar. Let me move on to Gong. Gong, it's expected that the Peruvian, that megaport that we talked about, that I talked about with the Peruvian ambassador, which is being built by China, will be inaugurated this week. There's been lots written and said about this megaport, Shanghai. How do you think the port will reshape trade between China and Latin America?
Well, during your interview with Peruvian ambassador to China, I think you hit all the nails on the head. I mean, this plot, as he described it, is extremely important, not just for Peru, but for all the surrounding countries in South America. It will serve as a mega port, a distribution hub, as well as a logistics hub, operation hub for the entire region. I think this is a very typical model under the Belt and Road Initiative, hopefully a successful model, that the port facility serves as a very good foundation for further trade development as well as investment. Actually, in Peru, we're already seeing quite a bit of investment coming from China into the country, into Peru, for further development. I can point to other examples like this. For example, this Palaria port in Greece, as well as the port, Gwadar port in Pakistan, and all these are good examples of how a port facility serves as a foundation, as a starting point for much enhanced economic relationships between the two countries. So I would forward to great development of the port facility, enhanced trade as well as investment into that region. And Peru is a very important country from China's perspective. The two economies are very complementary towards each other. We export a lot of manufactured goods, and we also import mineral and agricultural products from Peru.
Einar Tangen, I want to get your views on this port as well. But first, let me get back to that question I initially asked when we lost you for a few seconds there. The Chinese President Xi Jinping, as well as that very large Chinese delegation, are in Lima. The President will also be paying an official visit to Peru. And, looking at this, to what extent does his attendance at APEC, this official visit to Peru as well, underline the importance that China attaches to Asia-Pacific cooperation, to the concept of multilateralism, which, as I said, China has championed so often? What's the message he's going to be taking?
Well, clearly, by showing up, he's saying that he supports groups, the idea that we have to work together. This is a juxtaposition of where people think that Trump is going to go. So it's absolutely crucial that you have somebody who is, in fact, championing a group that is pushing regionalism, sustainability, the environment, and economic development, as opposed to creating barriers. And I think this whole issue with the Andes having this port there breaks something that had been a real problem for South America, and that is the Andes Mountains had always been this obstacle to get through to ship things to Asia. Now with this new port in Peru, things have opened up. It'll open up for Brazil, Ecuador, Colombia, etc., cutting valuable time, especially for, as John Gong pointed out, for any kind of agricultural exports where time is in fact money.
Ambassador Heine, of course, this port will not just be beneficial for the state of Peru. There's a huge hinterland there of many Latin American countries. It will service all these countries. And what are your expectations of what this will do to just trade volume, and as well as the time that is required to ship goods, export goods from the South American continent to other parts of the world?
No, I think this is a very significant step. And let me tell you, Anand, in Latin America, we have a problem which is, a deficit in infrastructure. We have been underinvesting in infrastructure, that is in ports, highways, tunnels, bridges, for a very long time. This means that the incidence, the cost of logistics and transport in our exports is about twice as high, somewhere between 13 and 17% per unit exported, than it is in the OECD countries. Now, a port like Shanghai helps us precisely to cut those costs down, to cut the amount of time it takes to get things across the Pacific to China and to the rest of Asia. So I would say it is extremely important. That is precisely the sort of things that South America and Latin America more generally needs. We need much more infrastructure, better infrastructure. So in that sense, I think Shanghai is a real milestone in that process.
John Gong, during that interview I had with the Peruvian ambassador, he also raised concerns about the rising specter of protectionism. Could that be a problem going forward?
Well, I think he's probably more referring to the American problem, the coming president who has ostensibly a America First agenda, and is very much opposed to trade. As a matter of fact, he's talking about imposing tariffs on trade. The ambassador also said that in the past that a lot of goods actually go into the United States before they come to Asia. So I think, with this new port facility being established, all of these hassles will be gone. I think, China's and also APEC countries, as well as ASEAN countries, ASEP countries, their trade with South America has nothing to do with the United States. I think the two regions tend to have a complementary relationship in terms of economics. I think there's a vision at the APEC to essentially merge these two trade agreements that have already been established. Talking about CPTPP as well as RCEP. And I think, maybe these countries like Peru, like Chile, can be added new members of RCEP. RCEP can definitely expand in scope and in membership as well, as the bilateral relationships keep blossoming. So I think even during a time when globalization is probably seeing a setback, there's still plenty of room for countries like Peru and Chile to further develop trade and investment relationships with countries like China.
Einar Tangen, what are your thoughts on protectionism? And we've heard that very often from the United States, as well as the imposition of tariffs. Now, of course, the new president will be taking office in January. He has threatened more tariffs. He says that he will place more tariffs on Chinese imports in an effort to, block the economic rise of China. So where do you see it going?
Well, I mean, quite frankly, there is a watershed that is coming. The U.S. assumes, I think Donald Trump assumes, that it's 2016 again, and that the U.S. is in a position that it is not. The fact is, you have India also looking at RCPTP and RCEP. That means that you have a growing group of countries who may decide that they don't, if the U.S. does not want to play, they will play amongst themselves. This would be absolutely devastating to the U.S. To have a major trade groups basically saying, if you're out, fine, we'll continue. And this port in Peru is absolutely essential to this kind of process because it frees them up in terms of time and also having to go around, these obstacles, including the U.S. So at this point, it is very, very important that people realize, especially in the United States and Washington, that Xi Jinping has said, look, we should cooperate. But if there is no cooperation, the world could go in a completely different direction, leaving the U.S. stranded and isolated.
Ambassador Heine, you wanted to say something on this issue?
Yes, I wanted to say that Chile has formally applied to join the RCEP. So, we'll see where it goes. But that is an indication of the continued commitment of Chile to the Asia-Pacific and to broader regional and interregional integration.
John Gong, the ambassador that I was talking to at the beginning of the show, he was talking about the bilateral free trade agreement that's between China and Peru right now, but he was talking about an Asia-Pacific free trade area. What are the prospects?
Well, I think this is exactly what I've been talking about just a minute ago. There is a vision within APEC that we can make use of these two quite successful free trade agreements. That's the CPTPP, which is mostly about trade between the two sides of the Pacific, as well as RCEP, which is mostly about the ASEAN market plus Australia, New Zealand, China, Japan, South Korea. So these two pacts could be merging together into a much larger free trade area, encompassing both sides of the Pacific Ocean. I think this vision certainly now, in my view, is in jeopardy, mostly because of the stance of the coming administration in Washington. But nevertheless, as the ambassador has just said, there are still countries on the other side of the Pacific that are willing to participate in a very successful free trade agreements within Asia, as well as Australia and New Zealand. RCEP has been extremely successful. We're talking about RCEP 2.0 expanding in scope to cover other areas like digital trade, investment, all these other new service trade, and all these new developments in international trade, as well as the new membership, right? I mean, Chile has applied, and other countries are also applying. So I think still there's a hope that there's something going on in the realm of free trade between the other side of the Pacific and this much larger size of the Pacific, encompassing the original ASEP regions.
Yeah.
So I think this is a possibility.
Ambassador Heine, I want to address one final issue, and that is technology. I mean, we've talked about this before, and how beneficial Chinese technology can be for the developing world and for developing economies as well. I mean, how transformative would it be as the technology sector in China invests more in things like infrastructure, digital infrastructure, that is, technology as well as digital connectivity that we've been talking about?
Absolutely. I mean, we live in the digital age. So, if we talk about the port, which is physical infrastructure, but in today's age, as important as physical infrastructure is digital infrastructure. Again, a country like Chile, my own country, with a very long and curious geography, we have an excellent example. We didn't have internet connectivity on the last 1,000 kilometers of our coastline. And that was provided. There was a project, Fibra Óptica Austral, to connect Puerto Montt to Punta Arenas and Puerto Williams. And that was done with Huawei. And now we have the full connectivity that we didn't have in the past. And that has changed the life of people in the southernmost tip of Chile. So again, what companies like Huawei and others from China are doing in the region is extremely important, and we very much look forward to doing more business with them.
Right, and I've got less than a minute left, but I just want to talk about China's expertise in green technology. Are we going to see more of that, more cooperation in the transition to green economies between China and the other APEC members?
Absolutely, and especially at a time when Donald Trump is appointing people who don't believe in climate change or the environment. China is taking the lead. They're sharing technology and jointly developing it, and this is really important for countries. It's no longer this thing where the technology will be owned in a major Western country and then basically leased to other countries. This will be joint development. This is about shared future, and Washington is in a position where it either needs to be on the train or it's going to be left behind. And when you start looking at BRICS, at APEC, ASEAN, all of these different groups, what do they have in common? They don't want politics. They want to talk about economics, and they're coming together at a time when the U.S. is going in the opposite direction.
Right, we are going to have to leave it there. Thanks to all of you for being with us. That's it for this edition of The Heat. I'm Anand Naidu.